Welcome back, friends. It's me, Ardalis. In this short video, I just want to talk to you a little bit about my history of blogging and getting started in that and why you should probably have a blog. So let's get started. I'm using the Internet Wayback Machine, or web.archive.org, to look up some of my old writing that I did on the aspalliance.com website. So if you search yourself, you can see aspalliance.com/Steve Smith. Hasn't been a working URL for a while, but you'll find it in the Wayback Machine. It goes all the way back to 1998. And if we click on that, I've already preloaded the tabs because Wayback Machine doesn't always work. You can see this glorious graphic design that I put together back in the 90s when I was just out of college. And so in here, this is a snapshot of what that page looked like. And you can see some of my initial tutorials. Now, this wasn't a blog as such because blogs weren't a thing in the 90s. That term didn't exist. But it was a place where I could upload ASP files and learn how to do stuff with active server pages. And that was pretty rare at the time. It was pretty hard to set up your own hosting and get all that worked out. It wasn't something everybody knew about. It wasn't something that you had GoDaddy, and you certainly didn't have the cloud or Azure or anything like that to make it easy to publish stuff. And so this ASP Alliance website existed and I became a part of it. And it gave me a way that I could FTP ASP files up to this location and build this site that you see now. And as I was doing so, I was also learning how to build things with active server pages. Active server pages only came out in 1997, I think. So, it was fairly new at this point, and there was not this huge community of developers that were using it. So this is what, kind of web pages might have looked like back in the day. Here were a few of my tutorials. You can see a lot of them say they're in progress or they're coming soon, etc. One of the very first things that I wrote about was something I learned at one of my first jobs, and that was how to create an Excel version of some data coming from a website. So I wrote this tutorial here on Excel output, and it's not a very long article, right? I mean, this is the whole thing. It's got 50 lines of code in there, but basically all that lines of code is just showing some HTML. And the one line of code that is actually important is this one right here, where you just set the content type and then let Excel do its thing, right? That's all this article is basically doing, is saying, if you have a table in HTML, Excel 97 can interpret that as a spreadsheet if you tell it that it's actually an Excel output. And so with that, this became a pretty easy way for you to do Excel reports or to give people a way to pull down some data in Excel in your early ASP web pages. And this became a pretty popular article that a lot of people found useful, right? I wrote this mostly for me so that when I went to another client, I could refer back to this and have this working functional sample and notes and everything that I could use later. But other people found it useful as well. And you can see this is back when Netscape was a browser and IE was the main thing. Chrome didn't exist, Opera didn't exist. None of these other browsers existed back in that time. So as I was learning more about ASP, I also learned how to do stuff with cookies. And eventually the ASP Alliance website, merged and morphed into a bigger website that was more content focused around articles and had a lot of different authors and had this sort of look and feel. So, this was written in 2000. It says it was published. I think I actually wrote the article a little earlier than that. And it again is not super complicated, right? It's just talking about how to do things with cookies. But search engines didn't really do a great job back in the day, right? We still had Yahoo trying to make the entire internet into a drill down tree view. So having this stuff where I could get to it, I knew where to find it, I knew I could trust it and that it worked, was very helpful for me. And as it turned out, it was helpful for a lot of other people too. And there were other companies that were trying to reach developers. And so you'll see, various things around here that are advertising related and sponsor links and stuff like that. So even early on, there was a way to monetize your content if it was popular enough, that in such a way that you could have this side income that would help you. Now, I ultimately took ownership of ASP Alliance in the late 90s and then eventually went on to sell it. So it became, a business that I was running with my wife, Michelle, for a decade. And it was something that turned into a decent source of income for us. But, that doesn't have to be true for your blog for it to be useful. Just having that content out there as a resource for you and a resource for others, a way for you to learn, a way for you to document what you've learned is all great reasons for you to consider blogging. And I'm mostly sharing with you these historical documents, if you will, so that you can get a sense of, how long I've been doing this and the fact that, this stuff, even if it's super trivial, simple things, like how to write a cookie out, is still something that many other developers will find useful, because there are a lot more beginners than there are experts. And there are always people that are just starting their journey and just entering into technology field or learning a particular skill in tech that might find this useful. So if you look at the Wayback Machine, another time when I found blogging helpful was in 2004. I got called up from the Army Reserves to go to Iraq. And so I decided soon after getting my orders that I would create a blog as a way for me to document my journey and, share, statuses and things with people back home. So instead of having to, write a bunch of letters or emails or whatever and tell my wife, my parents, my friends, etc., that I was okay or what have you, I could just give them my blog, and anytime I was able to, I could publish updates to my blog. So I created armysteve.com and wrote posts here. And so this was just another approach to blogging where I found this useful, and years later I found it valuable to be able to look back on it. And this kind of documents, this very first article here from April of 2004 talks about how I got notified that I was being called up. It was a little bit stressful because, I just spent a week on the road going to a developer conference down in Florida and driven 2 days back home. Our mail was stopped. And when we got home and we had messages on our answer machine, we listened to the answer machine message, and one of the first messages said, "Hey, Lieutenant Smith, when you get to Fort Leonard Wood, the one place is going to be closed, so you're going to have to check in over at this other place. Thanks, bye." Right? And that was it. There wasn't a whole lot of detail. It didn't say when I was supposed to be in Leonard Wood or why or any of that. So, I kind of interpreted that I was going to be there on the weekend because everything was going to be closed. But it didn't say which weekend. So, I didn't even know if I was already late. And if they'd called me up, because I was in the National Guard, and when you have a National Guard call up, usually you got to show up within, hours, not weeks. For this, it turned out, I found out in the mail the next day when I got my mail from the post office that I had 30 days. So I had some time to get my stuff together and put together a blog, for instance, before getting shipped out. But, this is another instance in which I found blogging to be helpful. Now, because I've had a bunch of different websites over the years, and I've moved my blog from aspalliance to Army Steve to WordPress sites and graffiti sites, if you remember graffiti, and other types of content management systems, I've tried to pull along as much of that content as I could into my current version of my blog, which is here at ardalis.com. And this is all just static. The reason why I ended up moving to a static website using Gatsby is because my WordPress site was getting really, really expensive to host, and WordPress was continuously requiring maintenance because of security attacks and other things. Whereas with a static website, it doesn't have any real attack surface area. So it's much more secure, and all of my sources in GitHub, so it's really cheap. GitHub is essentially free for public repos, and this is a public repo where I store it. And I can pull in all my old content, like that cookies article, in here. I can pull in all my Iraq stuff in here and have it in its own category. And so all of my content pretty much is now on ardalis.com here. All right, so I did write a recent article. As I'm recording this, it's the 28th. On the 26th, this went live on why you should blog. And it talks about some good reasons for having a blog as a programmer. So, it helps you to sharpen your skills, both your communication and writing skills, but also your skill of whatever it is you're trying to convey, whatever technical topic you're trying to explain. You'll have to understand it really well to be able to teach it. And so it really helps you become better at understanding the things that you're learning about when you have to be able to take that information and synthesize it and then teach it to someone else, whether that's verbally like I'm doing right now, or in writing like a typical blog. Of course, having a personal brand can be very valuable. It can hurt you too, right? If you do stupid things and everybody knows you did, then that's not necessarily a good thing. So, you want to be careful that you're not going to, do things that are embarrassing on your blog. But having a professional brand that's associated with you can only help you when you're looking for that next opportunity in your career. Now, that doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or an independent consultant, or if you're someone that enjoys working for someone else and having a regular 40-hour week or whatever job, and spending time with your family and having work-life balance. You never know when you might need to have that next opportunity, right? Because of a layoff or some other unexpected change. And so having that personal brand is going to help you at that point in time. It's not something you can build overnight. It's something that you have to build over a long period of time. It's like the saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So, start your blog today, and in however many weeks, years, whatever it might be, when it might be valuable to you to have that brand or that portfolio of your work, it'll be there and it'll serve that purpose. You can use it to document your journey, right? Much like having a journal, right? Or a diary. The whole idea of a blog is it's a web log. It's a log of things you were doing. And so it provides you with some historical context of the types of things you were working on over some period of time. That can be helpful. You are also contributing to the developer community by sharing your knowledge and your journey and things that you found interesting or useful in your work. One of the things I use my blog for a lot is helping out myself in the future. Anytime I spend more than a couple minutes trying to troubleshoot a problem that I'm experiencing, I don't always succeed, but I try to make a blog post about it so that the next time I run into that same problem, I will be able to just, Google for Ardalis and then some error message or whatever, search term that will bring it up. And I will find my previous article that is going to explain exactly how I fixed this the last time I ran into it. Now, sometimes I find my content by accident too, right? I'm searching for something and then I see my own article come up in the listing. I might not even remember ever writing that article, but there it is saying, hey, dude, you forgot, this is what you needed to do. And it has helped me out innumerable times. Of course, it'll help you with your communication skills, your writing skills, right? So if you aren't the best writer, doing more writing will make you better at that. So if something hurts or if you're not good at something, do it more often and you'll only improve. Now, I hear many, many objections to why someone doesn't want to write a blog, right? Maybe they think that, they're already on social media and that should be enough, or, they don't have time. Like, everything is a balance, right? Each of us has the same 24 hours in our day, and whether or not you have time is purely a function of whether or not you make time, right? It's what you make time to do. And that is true for blogging, that's true for, professional development, that's true for your health and whether or not you take time to work out or whatever it might be, right? All the things you spend your time on are things you prioritize spending your time on, either consciously or unconsciously. So, you can make time for things if you choose to do so. And remember, your blog is not an assignment from a professor or a teacher who is telling you that you need to have a 5-page, blog of 1,000 words and blah, blah, blah. It can be short. It can be whatever you need it to be, right? If you just fix some error message and, figured out what the problem was, your blog could be error message, here's what I did, publish it. Like, that's it. It could be a paragraph. So don't feel like it has to be huge. Not a great writer? Okay, start writing. You'll get better. Don't have anything unique to say? This is one of the biggest things I see people complain about or have this imposter syndrome around is, I don't have anything new to add, right? There's already experts out there. There's already all these great authors that are writing great blogs. How could I compete with Scott Hanselman or whoever it might be that's got all these great things to share? None of them are you, and none of them have your unique viewpoint. And one of the things that I find very valuable when I'm looking for a solution is someone who just went through that same set of steps like recently. So, yes, I could tell you about how, to learn ASP.NET web forms, let's say, because I used to do it, 20 years ago. But if you really needed to learn how to get set up with web forms today for, I don't know, some reason, someone who just did that yesterday with today's tools would be a much better resource for you than me going off of memory from 20 years ago. The idea is you, if nothing else, you are going to be the most recent person to have a viewpoint on this thing. And that recency, that currency matters because things change very rapidly in our industry. So just having a post that says, hey, as of today, this worked, right? That can be very valuable for folks, even if you add nothing else. And you will add other things. You're going to add your own perspective, maybe your own sense of humor, your own personality. You're going to have a set of assumptions that you had in place, and hopefully you cite what those are so that other people understand them. And those are going to be different than someone else or anyone else that was writing about that same topic. So it's perfectly okay. And in fact, if you have literally nothing to add, but all you do is take a number of different other resources that you use to solve a problem or to better understand something and list them, this is called a listicle, and you just say, look, I was trying to learn about X, and here's 5 great articles that helped me learn about X. That's it. That's great content. You didn't add your own content per se, but just by aggregating other content and telling folks that it was helpful for you can be helpful. All right, you can worry that nobody's going to read it, and that may be true at first, but if you write the blog for yourself first and assume that it's going to be valuable to you at some point, then you don't have to worry about whether anyone else ever gets any value out of it, and that makes that whole argument disappear. You could argue that blogging is outdated and that everybody's just using TikTok now, so who needs to write a blog? It is true that video has become much more popular and prevalent as a mechanism. I mean, I'm talking to you right now on YouTube, but that doesn't mean that blogging doesn't still have its place. And video is much more difficult to search for individual keywords. That's probably getting better, but for now, that's still true. And so having your text in a way that can be easily indexed and searched still has some benefits. It also, is a way that many people can consume content in environments where video doesn't necessarily work, right? There's plenty of times where, you may not have headphones, or you may not be in a place where you can listen to a video, or the captions aren't great. And it would be much easier if you could just read something, or much faster if you're, just looking for a code snippet. It's way quicker to find a code snippet in a blog post than to have to listen to a 10-minute YouTube video and try and find the right place where they mention the code, and then zoom in on the thing and actually try and see what the code looks like, because they probably didn't include the code anywhere. And now you've got to type it in yourself because there's no way to get it, or maybe if you're lucky, you can screen capture it and throw it into ChatGPT and let it, OCR it for you. The point is, there's many scenarios in which text is still a great way to share information, obviously. And so it is inaccurate to say that blogging is outdated and there's no reason to do it anymore. A couple of other things folks will use as an excuse not to get started is, I don't know which blog engine to pick. I don't know where to publish it. I don't know, what domain should I use or whatever, right? So, there are websites out there like Dev2 that will let you just start a blog. So you could start there. I have a coaching program called devbetter.com, and we have, some blogs there that folks use. And in many cases, it's temporary, and then they eventually get, to the point where they feel like they want to have their own blog, and they create one, and that's totally fine. But, don't let that stop you from starting, right? The important thing is to start writing and then, refine it from there, right? Make it better, make it prettier, edit the site, change the domain, whatever that might be. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Go ahead and get started writing something as soon as you can, and then you'll start to get feedback. You'll give yourself feedback, and you can iterate on that over time. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you again soon. Enjoy, start your blog, and keep improving.